The CHL is the best junior hockey league in the world and includes the WHL, the OHL and the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. It's structured and branded like a mini NHL, and it's got the best prospects that play in it. The players and teams have access to the best facilities, training centers and coaches, and the media coverage is very extensive. The players are often treated like absolute professionals, even though they often still go to school. The tough game schedule and lots of traveling can make it hard to combine the hockey with the school. The players in this league are paid all of the expenses and a small salary, and this is why it's considered to be a semi-professional hockey league, and therefore players are not eligible to play in the NCAA anymore. This is why players have to decide at an early age if they want to go the college route or the CHL route. Nevertheless, the CHL has a great partnership with the U Sports League, which is the Canadian equivalent of the NCAA, where the CHL pays 1 year of tuition for every season that a player plays in the CHL. So for example, if you play for 4 years in the OHL, you can then pick any school in Canada and go there for free for 4 years. There's 2 import spots per team, but there's no import spots for goalies. There's a CHL draft at 15. Today's interview is with Brent Peterson from Canada. Brent had a very successful career in the OHL and now plays in the American Hockey League. Today we'll talk about his experience in the OHL, which is part of the CHL, which includes the WHL, OHL and Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. Hi Brent, thank you for being here with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Marty.
Okay Brent, so the first question will be, the CHL and the OHL are very young leagues. When did you start taking hockey more seriously?
I think probably all started Major Bantam. I think that's when I started getting a little more serious for me. Started training a bit harder, realized that I might have an opportunity to play in the OHL. And then, going along in my Major Bantam season, then you get to minor midgets, your draft year. Then you take it even a little bit more seriously. And then there's a draft at the end of the minor midget year, and guys will get drafted to the OHL. And some guys will also sign as free agents, and that's when your opportunity to play there begins.
Yeah, could you please explain the exact age levels of Bantam, midgets, peewees, and so on?
So Bantam would be 14 years old, and minor midget would be 15 years old, and then the draft happens when guys are turning 16, because you have to be 16 to play in the OHL. So after your minor midget year is when the draft is. So when guys are 15 turning 16.
Okay, so you would say at the age of around 13, you started to train more professionally, right?
Yeah, I think that's when it began for me. I think it's starting to get a little more serious now. Kids are starting to train harder at an earlier age, but I think for my generation or my age range, I think guys started taking it a bit more seriously, started into weight training and stuff like that in around minor, major Bantam.
So since you're still very young, did your parents influence you a lot in becoming a pro hockey player that you're now?
I think it's important to get your kids involved in sports at a young age and see what they like. That's I think what my parents did with me. I started playing sports at 5, 6 years old, but it was never really pushing me to play. It was if I enjoyed it, I would play. And I think for hockey, I always enjoyed it. I really wanted to be a hockey player even from a young age, and that never changed growing up. And then my dad was also a hockey player, so that kind of helped me a little bit moving forward with advice. And just I think he was always there to influence me a little bit, which maybe that was when I was a young age why I wanted to be a hockey player, because of him. But as I grew up, I always enjoyed it. It was my favorite thing to do. So I think it just made sense for me, and my parents were just happy to support whatever I was happy doing.
So at 16, you finally made it to the OHL. Was it a big jump from the midgets to the junior A level?
Yeah, it's a big change. Kids are going from playing minor hockey, 15 and then they're turning 16, and some of those kids are, graduating into the OHL, where for the most part they're going and living away from home for the first time, living with a billet family, and then not only taking on those lifestyle changes, you're also jumping into a league that's, you're playing against guys that are up to 20 years old, right? So for the majority of the league is older than you, and those are the best players at that age range. So it's quite a lifestyle change for one, and two, it's the hockey's significantly faster because you're playing against older guys and guys that are the best for that age group.
Yeah, and how about the school? Was it tough to handle hockey in school? And did the team and the school also help you out?
Yeah, it was, like I said, it was definitely a bit of an adjustment. For me, I was close to the, Kitchener, where I began my OHL career, but I was far enough away where I had to go live with a billet family and go to a different school, which was a great, life experience for me. I would, highly recommend it, but it's definitely a change for sure, especially at only 16 years old. But for the most part, I think it's harder with the schedule that you have, playing 68 games. You're quite busy, road trips, you're missing days in school. And then when playoffs come around, your schedule's even condensed even more. You're playing, up to 4 games a week sometimes. So you're missing a lot of school during those times, but the OHL does a very good job at putting programs in place and tutors in place to help the kids along with the schooling and what they're missing in class.
So at 18, you had the honor to be drafted in the NHL. Was that a great experience, and can you tell us about it?
Yeah, it was. I felt very fortunate to have that opportunity and be able to go to those camps and see what get a little bit of a taste of what the NHL is like. From going to main camps where you're competing against those guys that are playing in the NHL, to also going to the prospect tournaments prior to the main camps and competing against some of the best players around the world that are prospects of other teams. So it was a really cool experience, and for a lot of the players that you're playing against at those prospect tournaments, you haven't seen before. A lot of these kids are coming from Europe that have been drafted out of leagues in Europe and places like that. So it's a really unique experience, and I'm glad I got to be part of that.
So after the OHL career, how come you decided to go to the U Sports League, whereas most of the OHL players graduate and go to the pros right away?
Yeah, I think initially, always it was my goal to go play pro and try to get to the NHL, and being drafted by Carolina, they had my rights for 2 years, and unfortunately I wasn't able to sign. But I think in the end it has worked out for the better for me, for my life. I was able to use my schooling package and go play at school for 3 years, CIS, which is very good hockey, and I'd recommend to anyone that, like me, was unable to jump to the pro right away out of the OHL. It was a good stepping stone for me to move forward with my hockey career and also get an education.
Yeah, interesting. So now being a pro in the American Hockey League, do you think that the OHL prepared you well for being a professional hockey player with a tough hockey schedule and so on? Do you think that you have an advantage compared to other players that maybe went to college or prep school?
I think it's definitely a bit of an advantage having done that before. I also think it's very different, whereas playing in the OHL, our road trips are relatively close. We're not traveling too far. Most of our trips are on weekends and stuff like that. Whereas when you jump to pro, you're traveling, all the time. Sometimes you're traveling for 2.5, 3 weeks straight. So I think that was definitely an adjustment for sure. And then also probably the extra 10, 15 games that you play.
So now you're in the American Hockey League and very close to making the jump to the NHL. But for after, do you think that you will eventually move on to play in Europe, or would you stick to North America?
Honestly, just taking it year by year. I'm really enjoying having the opportunity to be able to play after school and maybe chase my dream a little bit of trying to play in the NHL at this point. But eventually, I'm definitely not closing any doors. If Europe is the way to go at a certain time or a certain age for me, I would definitely enjoy experiencing playing overseas and, maybe experiencing some different countries and traveling, having the opportunity to play in some very, very good leagues over there and seeing how I can match up.
That was it for today, Brent. Thank you again for being here with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.